The Croatian coastline, a glistening wonder lining the Adriatic Sea. Its history dates back nearly 2 millennia to ancient Greece. Its medieval past fascinating, its recent past disturbing. Today, from the cities of Split to Dubrovnik, the traveller can explore ancient palaces, medieval ramparts, and stroll a set for a popular television series. Join us as we explore the Adriatic coast of Croatia, from Split to Dubrovnik. In the Adriatic Sea, you'll find Italy to the west, and approximately 200 kilometers across the water to the east are the shores of Croatia. There are many towns and islands one can visit, and in this traveller's guide, we'll start our exploration from Split, then journey to Dubrovnik. We'll walk through the ruins of a massive 30,000 square metre ancient palace. Marvel at one of nature's majestic aquatic wonders. Stroll medieval fortifications. Discover hidden delights down narrow lanes, and show you where to get the best views for that perfect Instagram shot or selfie. We'll also uncover a dark time in recent history and see how the city rejuvenated into a must-visit destination for travellers and filmmakers today. Split is the second to largest city in Croatia after its capital Zagreb, with around 300,000 people, both in the city and wider metropolitan areas. However, the visitors each year amount to more than triple the population. And no wonder, with a mild Mediterranean climate and over 300 sunny days a year, coupled with the charm of the historic old town. It was originally founded as a Greek colony somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd century BCE, eventually coming under the control of the Romans. It later became part of the Venetian Empire, then the French Empire under the rule of Napoleon Bonaparte, then the Austrian Empire. It was briefly annexed by Italy in World War II, then occupied by Germany, given to the state of Croatia, which eventually seceded from Yugoslavia in the early 1990s during the Croatian War of Independence. Confused? Well, to put it mildly, it can be said that this part of the world has a history of political unrest. 6 states made up the former Yugoslavia, one of which, Bosnia and Herzegovina, created the flashpoint for World War I. And the war as recent as 1991, involving the whole region as we mentioned. This led to the breakup of Yugoslavia into 6 countries, including Croatia. Today, things are quite different. Croatia is a member of the European Union, and with that peaceful year-round warmth and the charm of its old historic town we spoke of, and the growth of tourism, it's hard to imagine such a recent troubled past, if you're a visitor. And speaking of visitors, travellers who come to Split enjoy the wide open boulevard lining its shores with cafes, bars and shops. But as you venture past this shoreline and into the old town, that's where the ancient history begins. In fact, much of the old town used to look like this. Diocletian's palace used to cover most of the area. Construction began in 293 CE with the 30,000 square metre edifice taking up the space of a number of city blocks. The fortified palace was Diocletian's retirement home. As you explore the squares, the lanes, the cafes, and the shops, you have to remind yourself that much of this was once one massive palace. Until you get to the centre, that is. The remains of the edifice are more obvious here, and the ruins look unmistakably Roman. Of course, the costume buskers help too. Get your photograph taken with these guys, just for a fun souvenir. In amongst it all, you can see the Cathedral of St. Domnius, considered to be the oldest Catholic cathedral in the world still in use. And the 3,500-year-old Sphinx which Diocletian brought back from the Valley of Kings in Egypt. The arches and the ramparts are all signs of the great structure this once was. And under the great atrium of the palace, more buskers help you to immerse yourself in the richness of Croatian culture. This is a local a cappella choir performing with traditional klapa music or Dalmatian folk songs. These choirs can be found in most towns. And the delighted visitors are all too happy to tip them. On the other side of the palace, you'll see a bronze statue of Gregory of Nin. This is a 10th century bishop who was known for giving services in the local Croatian language instead of the traditional Latin, making religious education available to everyone. It was completed in 1929. And to the left and right of the palace, facing the waterfront, you can see another square with beautiful cloisters where there are more cafes. And markets where you can get that souvenir or bargain. All overlooking the waterfront lined with cruise ships. When you visit Split, be sure to do an excursion to the Krka Waterfalls in the Krka National Park. It's about an hour's drive away and you can get there by bus which leaves from the old town. When you arrive at the park, you'll board a boat that takes you a little upriver to see the star of the show. And there it is. Here you can gaze at the majestic aquatic scenery while taking in its walking trails and boardwalks. The flow rate of the water is about 55 cubic meters a second, but that depends on the weather, with the highest recorded flow being 481 cubic meters a second. But facts like these are lost when all you want to do is marvel at this natural wonder of nature. As you stroll the trails around it, every viewpoint offers new and different vistas. Remember, it's best to buy your bus tickets and entry passes to the park online before you arrive in Croatia. This can save you a lot of time organising bus rides and waiting in queues. And be sure to get here early. It's pretty crowded later in the day during the summer, and you can find yourself waiting patiently just to get that photo opportunity. The waterfalls are one of a number of excursions you can build into your travel plans when visiting Split. If you have a couple of extra days, you can also take a boat from Split to visit some of their chic islands. Two of the islands are particularly popular. This one is Hvar. Depending on the weather and the ferry operator you choose, it can take between 1 and 2.5 hours to get there, which is why some decide to stay overnight. The same is true for Korcular, about a 2.5 to 3 hour ferry ride away. Whether or not you decide to stay overnight on the island, Split is a logical place to base yourself for these excursions. But now it's time to head back to Split to enjoy the evening over dinner. As with most cities, Split looks different at night and takes on a whole new, beautiful appearance. You can dine at any of the many cafes along the waterfront, or walk back into one of those squares within the ancient palace to sip your wine while taking in the surroundings of floodlit ruins. As we contemplate the things we've seen here, we also look forward to traveling to our next destination tomorrow, Dubrovnik. It can take up to 5.5 hours to go by ferry from Split to Dubrovnik, or about 4 hours by bus. If you take the bus, the ride is smooth and you'll see great scenery along the way. In the southern part of Croatia, the fortified city of Dubrovnik conspicuously juts out from the mainland and into the sea like a precious stone on the water. Fittingly, both Lord Byron and George Bernard Shaw called Dubrovnik the Pearl of the Adriatic. The city stirs the imagination as you enter into a medieval time warp of centuries gone by. It is one of the most sought-after destinations by tourists who visit Croatia. The city dates back to the 7th century and is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was originally part of the Byzantine Empire before becoming under the rule of Venice. Like Split, it eventually became part of Croatia. The entire city was destroyed in 1667 by an earthquake. Remember we mentioned the 1991 Croatian War of Independence? This was a tragically destructive time for Dubrovnik. Many of the 6 states making up the former Yugoslavia, including Croatia, declared independence. And the path to war was set, climaxing decades of built-up tension, mainly over religious differences. Many civilians took refuge here because as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, people thought they'd be safe from the bombings, but that would not prove to be the case. Many of us watched our TVs in horror as the city was devastated by the shelling. Incredibly, the city that was built to withstand a siege from medieval weapons didn't fall to the assault from modern bombs. Thank goodness. And today, the damage has been repaired. You can see the terracotta roofs have been restored to their original form, only they're brighter compared to the darker original tiles. If your accommodation is outside of the city walls, you'll find there are 3 main gates: the Pile Gate, the Ploči Gate, and the Buzar Gate. Dubrovnik is surrounded by defensive walls, and along these are a number of fortresses. Standing here at the entrance of the Ploči Gate, at the foot of the Revelin fortress, you can see the fortress of St. John. Both the Revelin and St. John fortresses guard Dubrovnik's harbour. And if you look up a little while standing at the Ploči Gate, you can see people exploring one of Dubrovnik's main attractions, the wall itself, and we'll walk these ramparts later. As you enter the gate, one of the first things you'll see is the marble-paved main street. It stretches the whole length of Dubrovnik, only 292 meters or 958 feet long, between the Pile and Ploči gates. The street and side lanes are full of shops and cafes, which makes for a lovely stroll as you explore. And you'll notice there are bell towers standing over the squares at both ends. This is the 18th century church of St. Blasius at the Ploči end of the city. St. Blasius is the patron saint of Dubrovnik. Inside, you can see the richly decorated pipes of the organ designed in true Baroque style. And just opposite are the columns of the rector's palace. As you turn to your right, you'll see the Cathedral of the Assumption of the Virgin. And at the other end of the street, on the Pile side of town, you'll notice the big Onofrio's fountain. It stands next to the Church of Our Saviour. The fountain taps into a well 12 kilometers or 7.5 miles away. There's a smaller fountain on the other end of the main street near the Ploči Gate. The well still works and is safe for Western visitors to drink from. As with many attractions, it's best to explore early, before the tour groups arrive with hordes of people that crowd the streets in the summer. By the way, if you're looking at the city, particularly from the elevated position of the walls, you might wonder why it looks familiar. This is because Dubrovnik was used as the backdrop for the fictional city King's Landing in the hit TV series Game of Thrones. And from the ground level, we can see the so-called Steps of Shame, where Cersei was made to walk naked as part of her humiliating punishment for leading a sinful life. Later, she would exact her revenge on her judges, wiping them out in an explosion that appears to destroy a significant part of Dubrovnik, courtesy of CGI special effects. As you might expect, the souvenir shops are full of Game of Thrones merchandise, from t-shirts to coffee mugs and toys. Local tour guides capitalize on the hype by showing enthusiasts the filming locations. At the top of the so-called Steps of Shame stands the Church of St. Ignatius and the Jesuit College, also in Baroque style. The Baroque period followed the Renaissance period, and you can recognize it because of the heavy decoration of the interior. This interior is considered to be the finest, not only in Dubrovnik, but also in all of Dalmatia. But remember we mentioned one of the city's biggest attractions, the wall itself? You can purchase tickets to walk these ramparts, and it's a worthwhile exercise. It takes about 1.5 to 2 hours to do the entire 5.5 kilometre or 3.4 mile walk, depending on how often you want to stop and take in the sights. It's not a difficult walk, but you might give it a miss if you have mobility challenges. Just remember 2 things. Purchase your tickets online before coming here to save time queuing. And also remember that if you want to use one of a number of exits to leave the walls, you can't get back in again on the same ticket. There are a number of entry points to this walk, but a common starting point is near the Pula gate. As you stroll the battlements, you'll see all of the sights we saw earlier, only this time from above. The churches and the cathedrals, the bell towers, the public squares, and also admire the panorama in general. Of course, you'll notice many features of its defences, including the forts built into the walls. This one is Fort Mincita, the tallest and most conspicuous defence tower making up Dubrovnik's historic skyline. The fall of Constantinople hastened the need to strengthen the city's defences. This fort's walls are 6 meters thick, with gun ports like this one built into it. The views from its battlements are the best from inside the city walls. As you continue to explore the walls, you'll see magnificent views of the St. Lawrence Fortress, built to counter the threat of a Venetian invasion. Word got out that the Venetians were planning to establish a siege fortification of their own on this very spot. The citizens of Dubrovnik reacted with haste, speedily constructing the St. Lawrence Fortress. When the Venetian fleet arrived, they saw their prized position for the assault was already a formidable defense fortress and turned their ships around, leaving Dubrovnik without a fight. On a lighter note, you'll notice the odd surprise when you do this walk too. You can stop at cafes along the ramparts to take in the views of the Adriatic at a leisurely pace. And as you explore the side of the fortress, look down. You'll see the aptly named Boozer Bar on the outside of the walls, where you can enjoy a beer on a rock ledge poised over the water. If you explore the lanes, you'll find it through this narrow opening in the city walls. And there are other hidden secrets just outside, perched over the water. As you look over the harbour entrance from the Fortress of St. John, you'll see where we started, at the Ploče Gate. There are lovely cafes inside the city, but if you walk outside that gate, you'll find restaurants with stunning views looking back towards Dubrovnik. How about enjoying the freshest Adriatic food with some wine? And with your very own cannon next to you, all while looking back at the spectacular medieval harbour. After lunch, stroll just a little bit further if you'd like to dip your toes in the warm sea at the nearby beach. But don't forget to explore the harbour itself. From there you can find more restaurants and board a boat to explore nearby islands. For the most spectacular views of Dubrovnik, take the cable car to the top of Mount Suric. There was no need to use our drone to capture this aerial view. And as you savour the panorama below, savour also a drink from the bar, all while you take your time to appreciate the historic landscape 412 metres or 1,352 feet above sea level. Split and Dubrovnik are just 2 of Croatia's popular destinations. There's a lot to discover if you can make the time. You can also visit Pula, which is just to the north between Split and Italy's Venice. In fact, some travellers start from Venice and ferry to Pula before making their way to Split. You can also cross the border into Bosnia and Herzegovina to visit historic Mostar, and there are many other places. As with all touring, the key is to do your research and plan carefully to ensure you get the most out of all your effort to get there. But be careful not to cram everything in to the detriment of fully appreciating the beautiful things you can discover and experience. Make sure you do justice to the wonderful places you do visit. And speaking of taking your time to appreciate our experiences, evenings are a great time to reflect on today's adventures over good food. Back in Dubrovnik, nighttime has arrived and the city with all its lanes lined with cafes comes alive. As you dine here, you can reflect on your amazing trip to the Croatian coast, from Split to Dubrovnik, with its incredible history, its natural wonders, and the warm climate by the exquisite waters of the Pearl of the Adriatic.